another member of the board, which would give us the quorum that we need to pursue any activity in the agenda. So unfortunately, we'll just have to wait. I expect he's en route. There was no indication. I think Mark has a heating problem at home, probably will not be here, but we expect John to breeze in here any moment. Happy New Year.
Tell us a story, Maureen.
I could tell you stories that you would say, oh, Maureen, stop, that can't be true.
Well, I'm glad when we said the Pledge of Allegiance, we didn't follow Kamala, because she forgot the word under God.
Well,
I forgot too. I forgot too.
Really? You can't do that.
Oh, you can? Oh.
was it purposeful or just forgot?
I don't know.
Then we could talk about that.
Of course, everybody's
Kidding.
Of course, everybody's picking on her.
Well, yeah, I'm not.
No.
I give her a great deal of credit for doing and trying to do what she did.
Yeah, well, she tried.
That's all you can do.
Well, I watched the transition.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was very smooth, very
Well, as it
organized.
should be. Every year it's just a sleeper, which it should be. You know?
It was very organized. I
Yeah.
really was pleased. I was pleased to be an American.
I wake up every morning pleased to be an American. Sometimes I'm embarrassed a little, but I am pleased to be an American. Well, just to let you know, remember, every year that we put up the ice skating rink, the week after we put up the ice skating rink, it gets so warm we never have skating. So, any luck at all, we'll either have next week will be very warm or not. But I think it's supposed to be this week. The fire department is going to help and so forth, and there's going to be a big, getting the water in there, and the liner.
I think it's supposed to be cold.
It's supposed to be cold this week, and that's a good thing. Things can get settled, but then it has to stay cold and not snow and sleet and stuff all over the ice.
Maybe we should build a roof for it.
Oh, sure, then in my spare time, or do you think that the community would like to say, nice idea, Maureen, let's pay $100 grand for that?
Okay, let's put that tent we bought for the.
We have 2 tents.
Over it.
Yeah, I have, well, see, if they're not built for that, you know what I mean, to hold a snow load or anything like that.
I hope the tents and all their equipment is still there.
Well, not only are they there, there is an effort to make a change in the dynamics of the area around the facility at DPW, and so the new guys are working on, next steps and planning, so we're happy about that. So, who knows?
I did have a question. I think you can answer it, but
Iffy.
if you can't, we'll have to wait for the meeting.
Okay.
What expenses could be paid for with Chapter 90 money?
Chapter 90 monies, can be utilized by the DPW, and I'm gonna, now that he's here, Vingo, I'm gonna say, here's my Chapter 90 expert. As you know, John works at the state level with a lot of Chapter 90 funding and stuff. And Tammy, that I believe John have had communications with our liaison to the Chapter 90 funding. And certainly our new DPW person, I believe on January 15th or something, we're all invited to the meeting. He's going to be here, the Chapter 90 gentleman, and he's going to be walking us through what we can and what we can't do. But John, I'll give you that question to the.
Okay, I have a specific reason related.
Yeah, I actually missed most of the question, so
Well,
we should,
Well,
Now that there's 2 of you here.
Okay, now that there's 2 of us here, we will open the meeting and we will go immediately to public comment. And Sam's stunning surprise that you will be the first one in this new year to be, kind of
official.
recognized for public
Can I use
comment.
my question for
Yes,
public
go ahead.
comment? Well, the reason I ask is because there appears to be a holdup on this dam issue in regards to the annual maintenance. And that seems to be, it seems to be my holdup, and maybe I haven't discussed with others, but I'm sure that people are concerned with the tightness of our fiscal budget. And the question is that could we arrange to have the maintenance on an annual basis paid for with Chapter 90 money, and that might alleviate the problem. It's not like we don't want the folks from from the state to come here and talk about it, but I think that
So-
that could be a key. So that's the question I had.
Okay. We should probably open though before
We
Respond?
did, we did
Okay. the
we
pledge.
did the whole
Okay.
thing, yeah.
All right. So, I will clarify, I don't work for the state or at the state level. I work for a private company, but we do a lot with that. So I would say off the top of my head, pretty solid chance that's a no. Chapter 90 is really meant for roads, and very specific parts of roads. You can't even use it for, snow removal. Can't use it for plows, but you can use it for vehicles to construct roads, to repair roads, but it's really focused on roadways. So I'd be pretty shocked if they would let us use it for anything related to a
But
dam.
nobody's asked.
We have not asked, and definitely, when we do have our liaison to our Chapter 70 funding, we can bring that to his attention or her attention.
Yeah, aside from potentially putting a town-accepted road over the dam, which I don't think there's any plans to do, I don't believe there's any opportunity to use Chapter 90 there.
Yeah.
The other point I'd just bring up is, despite it appearing like we have Chapter 90 money to use, we actually have more obligations in
Yeah.
town to accomplish with that money than we actually have money to do.
Correct.
So any money you take out of Chapter 90 technically just means we now have to backfill road maintenance with the general fund, which is still just taken out of the same pot of money.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
moving Chapter 90 money is not gonna change the impact of the budget
Nice.
Right.
point.
We-
in itself.
We really need Chapter 90 to, as efficiently as possible, add linear miles to our roads.
Okay, a public comment, we still have, if anyone else is here for specifically a public
wait,
comment. Thank you, Steve. Anyone? Yes, sir?
If we did end up taking the responsibility of it, going into the future, if it was used for recreational purposes, it would remove any liability for the town if it was used.
Could I just ask, we're gonna move up the old business section in a little bit, which is, focusing on the Barre Reservoir Dam.
Yes,
And so I think that would be more appropriate, instead of doing it in open, public comment, to wait until we get to that, so that people who are here to have conversations about the dam can hear that information. Because I think it's good information, Mr. Kane, so I don't mean to stomp on your opportunity for public comment, but you'll get public comment.
well, that's okay, I just understood that folks were commenting
Yeah.
already. so.
Yeah, like, but I think they were commenting on actually utilizing different money sources and
Right,
how it,
and it's all about the money.
and it's always all about the money. Moving along into the meeting minutes, we have before you meeting minutes from December 16th, 2024. Those are meeting minutes that we were looking for our approval. You've had opportunities to review as presented the minutes that are before you. You would look for a motion?
Yep. I would move to approve the meeting minutes for December 16th for the open session for release, approval and release.
I would second that. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving along to December 16th, 2024, the executive session meeting minutes for 2024 on December 16th. We have a motion.
I move to approve the executive session meeting minutes from December 16th for approval, but not release at this time.
I would second that motion. Since you and I, John, were the only ones in the executive session, we're the only ones to comment. I have no comment. And we would look for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have also there our December 17th, 2024, second town meeting pre-discussion meeting minutes for review and approval.
I move to approve the December 17th, the special town meeting. I believe this is the first, yeah, this is the 5:30, so this is the,
5:31 with the budget
Yep,
and finance.
for the Budget and Finance Committee meeting prior to the special town meeting for approval
I would
and
second-
release.
I would second that as the meeting minutes are presented. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. approved. We have then December 17th, kind of redundant a little, but we do have the December 17th, 2024, the special town meeting minutes, and those, of course, are just basically what was put together by the town clerk and others. Opening the meeting with Jay Smith, town moderator for the special town meeting at 6:36 p.m. And we would indicate that we respectfully submit those meeting minutes and approve as required by the town bylaws. Those in favor?
I move to approve the December 17th, 2024 special town meeting minutes.
Aye. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The second one?
Okay. I'm doing the other one, yeah. But you keep me honest. Okay. Moving along then to December 30, do we have?
We can pass over those, I wasn't
Table
there.
that because John wasn't here.
Okay, so we'll table those until
The next meeting.
a later date.
Okay.
Okay. I think, if you remember, most of you feel that the folks who were going to attend this meeting but thought that they were going to be a little later in the agenda would be here. We're ready to move to old business in deference to the people who are here.
Yeah, we'll go ahead.
Are we good? Okay, we are going to be discussing old business, and we've discussed this at a number of our meetings in probably the past year. That is a conversation relative to the Barre Reservoir Dam. Liz, I don't know if I recognize you, who can introduce for the audience the individual who is here. And it's a presentation about one of the possible things that the town could vote to do with the dam.
Okay.
Okay, Liz, here you go.
Okay, so I came to 3 meetings about this subject over the past, 6 months?
At least, yeah.
And all those meetings were mostly attended by the same people who all are neighbors of the reservoir.
Mhm.
And they're all in favor of keeping the reservoir because they're used to having it there.
Mhm.
I didn't have any opinion about this issue starting out. I just was listening to the engineers, listening to people talk. I talked to friends on both sides of the issue. And I just remember a select board member said at one point, well, we haven't heard from anybody who thinks the dam should be removed. I think that's because almost nobody else knows about it.
Mhm.
So, although you did hear from the Nipmucks, I hope you guys read
Yes,
that
I did.
letter.
Yep.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I've walked out to the reservoir 3 times since Thanksgiving, so that I would know what I'm talking about. It's not easily accessible.
No,
Have you guys walked out there?
not 3 times since Thanksgiving, but
Well, it's really,
in the summer.
it's not just right there, there's no
No.
parking,
Oh, well,
there's
no,
no
we know that.
paved road, it's not easy. So I started out to make people more aware of it. I put some things on Facebook about the options that the state was offering to us, and I took it to some groups of people that were interested. I started making phone calls, trying to find some real information. And the more I thought about it, the thinner the arguments got for repairing the dam. And my considered conclusion is a -1, that is, that it would be financially irresponsible for the town to choose to own a dam with all the expense, lawyers, road construction, maintenance, inspections, liability insurance. Plus, I haven't heard that anybody has added up all those costs. It would be crazy to tell the state, we want to repair the dam, and then we'll figure out what we're gonna do about it. So there's a lot more to say about all that stuff. But this is a really consequential decision that will matter for generations. It's not just something that will matter now. Whichever choice is made will have an effect on all the people that live around here for a long time. So that's my negative conclusion, but also we have some people here who have some positive reasons to restore the river and renew the dam, remove the dam. This is Becky Budd from Connecticut River Conservancy, and also Lucy Allen from the Historical Commission has compiled some information about the history of the dams.
Vicki, I know you have a brief presentation.
Yes.
Would you like to go ahead with that now?
Yep, I had my emergency printout, so you can have that for evermore.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm the restoration program manager at Connecticut River Conservancy, and my job is literally to take out dams. That's what I do. And so it's very, specific and unique thing for each community to decide about, and it's you all have to make the decision. But I wanted to share what I know about the ecological side and the benefits that can come from renewable. And I don't know if this tells, like, should other
You can
people
move it
see
if you
or-
want. Yep.
I don't know if anyone can see, but.
It's fine, I can see.
Okay. So just a little bit about our organization. We have been around since 1952, and our mission is to restore, advocate for clean water and healthy rivers and have healthy habitat and resilient communities. Part of resilience is also, recovering from climate or large storms, flooding, stuff like that. And dams generally, people have a misconception, dams generally are not flood control unless they were specifically built to do that function. So a regular old water supply dam does not provide any flood benefits, flood reduction benefits. And removing it actually helps you because now the river has access to all this space that used to be covered by water. So that's just something to keep in mind. The thing that is dearest to my heart, because I also do a lot of habitat restoration for rare species like wood turtles, is that removing a dam restores the connectivity that's needed for fish and other aquatic organisms, and even some that are terrestrial, but wood turtles are mostly riparian species. They spend a lot of time in the river. But everything benefits from having that barrier, especially fish, because most of them cannot make it up a drop that's like 20 or 15 feet, You also get, with flowing water, instead of sort of a stagnant pond, you get higher dissolved oxygen. You reduce the water temperature because when the water is sitting and the sun is hitting it, it starts to heat up, and that cold water loving species like trout don't like that. So restoring the river back, generally also either by a natural seed bank or by intentional planting, you restore the shade canopy over the river, keeps it much cooler, and it's a really important resource to keep cool. So you also get nutrient reduction because the plants that grow where the water used to be start sucking up all the nutrients. So anything that's coming, running off, say it's a farm, runoff from the farm gets sort of, the root systems will suck up the nutrients. So it keeps all of that from the river. And along with being cooler and having, good amount of oxygen, you don't get as many algae blooms that you may have heard of in other places. It starts to turn green and it's a little iffy and no one wants to dip an oar in there at all, nothing. So, again, as I said, you get increased flood resilience because now the river, when there is a high storm event, has access to floodplain like it should, and it spreads out and slows down and then sinks back in the ground. So that helps the downstream communities. If you can imagine like a full bucket, this was the greatest analogy that someone told me, that what would you rather put under your leaky sink, a full bucket or an empty bucket? And basically, a lake that is backed up by a dam is a full bucket. And the other part of it is that sediment normally is always moving through rivers. It's just coming along and it drops out, and some of it will spill out into the floodplain and get deposited, and it's just sort of a normal process. When you put a dam in place, all that sediment gets trapped, and over time, the pond gets very shallow, and you can probably even see it's only a little bit, just this deep. And if you have things that you have to maintain, you've got to then excavate say there's an outlet down below that people can open and close to change the water level if they need to, which is a common practice. Once that fills in with sediment, then you've got to get an excavator and pull it out and free it up, and there's sort of a constant maintenance. The other thing is, even though everyone is sort of thinking about the lack of recreational opportunities if this confinement goes away, I would argue that you get more opportunities. You can have more fishing. You know, if you have restored your trout fishery up above the dam, there's fishing opportunities. I don't know the size of this river, if it would support kayaking in a high flow or not, but in some cases you can add, when there's no longer a barrier, you have safe ability to kayak. That's happening on one of my other projects along the Green River. Even swimming and wading sometimes, because mostly people are not supposed to go near a dam. It's like, it's a hazard. You don't want anyone getting caught where there's an outflow. You know, it depends on the size of the river and flows and all that, but it can be quite hazardous and dangerous. So generally people are not supposed to go near them. And without it, you can freely walk and hike. So that's my pitch for that. Just to orient us, you probably know this well. I know you've all heard a lot of presentations from engineers, but the Prince River is here and it flows down to the Ware. Your dam is here, and the red square means it's the high hazard classification, which means that that's basically a hazard potential, which means there's significant damage that could happen if the dam was to have an uncontrolled release. So that's just where it's at. What else to say about that? I was trying to keep the labels off on the subsequent slides, so it gets kind of busy, but I'm sorry it's not a great picture, but when I did go visit, I tried to take a picture of the spillway, which you can kind of see. It's right in there. And there's a drop. The water is flowing over here and going downstream. There's also a beaver dam starting over here. I don't know how old it is. It was quite cold the day we went, so I didn't go getting too close and risk falling in. So, but that to me means there's beavers. They're around and about. Oh, did I say? Oh, just to reiterate, I took this right out of the ACOM report. The dam beyond the spillway is 20 feet high. It says in the report 690 feet long, although in the National Inventory of Dams, they listed it as 225. So I don't know what ACOM was, if they were counting the whole full spillway or not. That was the name of the engineering firm that came and presented to the town about options. So high hazard potential, it's classified in poor condition, which is based on engineering study. And the spillway that we're looking at was partially breached and lowered 6 feet in 1987. That's just from their report. So I thought I'd reiterate in case people wanted to know. Yes, you want to ask a question?
Thank you. Couple of questions.
Yeah.
Were you able to do any research on our particular situation about stream flow rate for the fish? Everything I've been able to find out is that it's not possible. And secondly,
Excuse me, what's not possible?
trout restoration.
Oh.
Okay.
And secondly, I guess you're not aware that last time that DCR Office of Dam Safety was here, after what they said was hundreds of hours more study over the summer, you might not have got the information that they now feel as though they can remove the high hazard dam classification. That was in our next meeting. Thank you, ma'am.
Yep, I did not get that piece of information. I'm no expert about your situation, only
Right.
the ecological benefits. I did do some research, and what I got was, it is anticipated that there will be 3 miles of brook trout habitat that's connected. And I did talk to Stephen Maddox, who is a fisheries biologist from Mass Fish and Wildlife. And he was telling me things about jumping heights and length of trout, and he's really the pro.
Right.
He wanted to.
Familiar with those guys.
Yeah, yeah, he's great. I as I said, did not climb down there and measure what the drop is currently, so I don't know if a trout that's 6 inches big could make it up that or not. But he was telling me around Massachusetts, the trout are more like 6 inches, they're not very big, and the jumping capacity is 4 times their body length, but more likely only 2 times. So he was thinking about 1 foot is what they could make it up.
Yeah.
So, but that's not even a debate, I mean, that's not my area of expertise, but I was trying to inquire, like, what's going on with that.
In my experience at the Wiki Reservoir, something that was 10, 15 years ago, the trout have survived, but they haven't expanded or become more of a breeding population. That information is from Todd Richards at Mass Wildlife.
And where's, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with, where's that reservoir?
It's in Sterling, and there was the same situation as what we're going through. There was some dams that needed to be removed. Sterling ended up repairing the dams, because also, I think you're unaware that this whole situation, as far as we know, is that aquifer is feeding our town wells. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an engineering question about
Right.
water levels, and
Right.
they do a lot of what they call H&H, or hydrographic and hydrologic studies to
Yeah.
determine whether there's a well impacted. Did they not cover that
They
in your
didn't even know it.
alternatives?
There was nothing in their first report about that, nothing.
Usually if they run models, they can tell whether it's gonna be an issue.
They didn't know that it was part of our, we asked them right here in the chair, and the fellow says, we don't know. The director of dam removal. Yeah.
Okay.
So these are some of the issues we're facing, and
Yep. What I usually do in situations like this, if there is a sincere concern, then I go back to the engineer and ask, I think we need more time to make this decision, and we need another study.
totally agree.
If that's something, because it sounds like to me you're all struggling to make a quick decision, and it's not really something that you want to make quickly. Like, I don't know if
I would
there's a
say that
timeline
it has
for that.
it has been sort of discussed with us a couple times now,
Mhm.
and we have not sort of gone beyond the one idea of either, we haven't even really talked about removal at all.
Oh.
We've talked about, okay, other options.
Okay.
And other people now say, gee, we should really at least, examine the
Mhm.
other option. And I think, are you here to talk with us about the history? Excellent.
Yeah.
So we do have someone here to talk a little bit, where did this dam come from, and why was it placed there? And who placed it there, and how come they're not alive anymore to take responsibility for? Okay. And so I would be helpful, because I don't know how much volume there is, if, say, we let Swift River go, right? Let's say we did that. What happens to my backyard if I'm part of what's happening down, okay, you let it go, and I go, oh, hey, wow, I didn't realize this, but now I don't have a backyard. I have, some of the, whatever river this is gonna be called, going through my backyard, which might be lovely, it might be nothing I ever dreamed I wanted. So talk to me a little bit, if you can, Becky, not only about that, but also if we could find out from, from our historical people.
If you go above
Yeah.
impoundment and you go below the impoundment, you generally see what size river is going to be there. It's not gonna change the general, you're not gonna suddenly have this water suddenly miraculously expand and fill up your entire backyard. It's not. It's going to be the same river width.
Oh, okay.
You have what they call a reference reach, that's what they call
Okay,
it.
reference.
Imagine
With some
putting a full
exception
cup of
to-
water under a faucet.
I'm sorry?
Yes,
Imagine
back to
putting
the
a full
bucket.
cup of water under a faucet. The
Yeah.
water coming out of the faucet entering the sink is the same amount whether the full cup of water is there or not.
Okay,
Yep.
You're just removing the cup, the dam,
and then let it
and
go.
still letting the same water flow in
Good
and out.
example.
With some
Class.
exception for evaporation, but it's, not a huge factor in that.
Okay, so just let me finish for this, I believe it will also increase biodiversity because you have the presence of beavers. And if anyone's read this fabulous book called Beaverland, I know that no one wants a beaver flooding their driveway or whatever thing, but here, there's ample room. So if, let's just say, there was a stream there, a beaver came and they made a lovely little beaver wetland, you have all kinds of different plants that come in, different animals that make use of it. So it isn't the same as what you see now, but it is definitely an actually more biodiverse habitat. And I think it's a good thing, in particular where it's not gonna damage any really important infrastructure, roads, bridges, flood-fueled basins, whatever like that. So if you have places that beavers can acceptably live and thrive, it'll be good. So that's just the plug for wildlife. Again, helps with flooding, which is kind of the main issue with a high hazard dam. The worry is that if something uncontrolled happens, stuff gets damaged downstream. So if you have, again, like I said, access to the floodplain, it actually acts like a sponge, especially if it's a beaver wetland. If anyone wants to read that book, I highly recommend it. Beaverland, check it out. Okay.
What's the name of the book, Beaverland?
Beaverland, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm a tender-hearted person, and it starts all about the fur trade. So you've got to if you're like me, you might need to get through the fur trade part. But that's what it was about in the beginning. So this is also just a quick. One of the most exciting things about this is that all this area that is green and yellow hatching is mapped as endangered species habitat. And I tried to find out what it was. Maybe you all know or are privy to it, but they're like, no, you can't know what that is until you go into permitting for the project.
Right.
So I did try to get a little intel, and they wouldn't tell me. But it is mapped. And these purple areas are all trout, like the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture maps all the polygons, and they have designated that a trout area of habitat. Yes.
I think they didn't want to let on really about the endangered species, because a lot of times there's, when these things happen, that the endangered species sort of take a back seat. And they're their own state statutes that we're supposed to be adhering to.
But when you, just want to finish this one thought. When you see polygons that go along the river, they're usually a riparian dependent species. It's not some endangered species that is going to then be harmed by the reservoir gone. It's usually something that gets helped. I can't be assured, I can't say without a question, because I don't know what it is, but generally those long skinny polygons mean it's like a riparian species.
Probably not down in the riparian zone, but up where the dam is and the wildlife and endangered species that are supported there now will be negatively affected. There's no way around it. Thank you.
Okay. I only know about the endangered species map that we can see, and there's nothing in this area which is here. That doesn't mean there aren't important species, it just means it's not that endangered species habitat that the state maps.
There's 52 some odd species in the area. It's on the DEP list. Thank you.
Okay. The other thing to note, and it's really hard to see, but I got the map of cold water fisheries resources, which is another state mapping. And the dark blue, which is the Prince River, is mapped as a cold water fisheries, which I've been talking about trout a lot. And what it means to be a cold water fisheries resource is that you can support cold water species. And one of them is trout. And the main thing is that the temperature is no more than 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is one of the things that is like so great about a really wooded and lovely cold stream. So that's the dark. And then the lighter are just other streams as well. So that's what I have about that. The other thing to think about, and this is, I'm only, I don't love regulations, and it's always hard to read through them, but I would recommend highly that you look at the Code of Massachusetts regulations for dam owners. You have to have inspections every 2 years for a high hazard dam. If there's something found, that's some problem, it's in poor condition again, and you haven't addressed it, then they start asking you for like every 3 months, you have to have it updated. It's a lot. And now this wouldn't happen if it was all new and fixed for a long time, but you're gonna be kicking the can down the road to someone in the town. Someday, it's gonna happen. Let's see. The other thing is all the fines, which I was always floored by. It starts to like rack up really quickly if you're not in compliance with their regulations. It's like $5,000 an incident. Sometimes it starts getting to daily. It's like, it's a lot. So again, if it was newly repaired, these types of problems wouldn't be happening now, but they'll be happening sometime. So, that's that. This was just a little estimate that an engineer gave to me, and it isn't necessarily pertaining to this dam. It was sort of like a, in general, this is what it costs. A phase 1 investigation, which would be the thing that you have to do every 2 years, would be $5,000-ish. And of course, engineering, like all costs are going up, so you have to kind of project into the future. Every 2 years, it's gonna be a little more. Follow-up inspections, $300, $3,500. And if something is found, let's just say there was damage, a big storm comes, some damage, something happens, something gets cracked, some problem happens, then you start talking about a phase 2 investigation where they start doing studies, millions of studies. So it gets very pricey. Emergency action plan you have to have, and you have to update it regularly. I think the first one is 15,000, but I don't know what it is like to update it. If it's you have to have like anybody who's new in the area, you have to have like downstream residents use it and all that stuff. So, and then the maintenance costs, which you talked about with other folks. Yes.
Is there anybody else would like to speak? I don't wanna take up all the time.
Well,
but-
I'm gonna ask if very quick question from a couple people, and then let's go to Lucy, who can talk a little bit us through.
Is Becky finished?
I am.
Right.
That was my question.
She wanted to know if there's any question.
I have a few questions also, but.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Alright, so I was trying to figure out the comment based on removing a dam would allow for additional infiltration during a major flood event. But every time I looked it up, I always got, best management practice, stormwater, and actually building berms and whatnot to retain the water. So if you speak to how opening it up and allowing a flow through would actually prevent flooding downstream in a high hazard, like in a major storm event. Because so far they said that the reservoir as is could withhold 16 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, which is pretty significant considering if we ever got 16 inches of rain, I mean, that would be impressive. I think we'd have some major problems. And the other one too, as far as the environmental benefits of a reservoir, I really couldn't come across much information, but trying to take the closest equivalent would be a beaver dam that would act similar to this, and there was significant amount of information on the environmental benefits, also providing habitat for trout during low flow events. So if we remove this dam, are we gonna actually be killing a lot of the wildlife that's using this as a safe harbor during these dry periods? Because if you go down to that reservoir, the stream, during the dry months, it's just gravel. There's nothing, there's no water, nothing could survive, not a lizard, not a frog. So I'm trying to figure out how I can reconcile these two differences, because the way that I'm looking at it, if we rebuild, it would be pretty simple to maintain the infrastructure and allow for a flow through that is there, because you said you didn't look at the drop on the dam that was removed, and I don't believe it's more than a foot or two, because they took the concrete structure down to pretty much the previous stream bed. So, but if you're gonna go through a redesign, it wouldn't be that complicated. I do think that we have the mental capacity of the, engineering to make a flat riverbed that would kind of work its way around. So I'm just trying to figure out these two differences that don't seem to, I can't quite understand.
It's a long question with
I guess,
lots of parts.
why wouldn't this act like a beaver dam and provide the same environmental benefits? I guess it's a simple question.
Would a beaver dam provide the same benefits?
Why wouldn't this?
Why wouldn't this?
Yes.
This is the full bucket scenario. I know they gave you the 16 inches
Yeah.
thing, but there's considerably more sponge if there's more surface area.
Yep.
And basically, when trees are, like riparian trees, like silver maples, silver maple forest, red maple, floodwater comes down, and those stems slow the flow, like the various, like cattails, whatever, everything that grows there is slowing the flow down. And the slower it goes, the better chance things have of settling down, settling out, spreading out. So that's, I don't know how better to explain it, but if you look at, read the book, and you'll see. It's great, there's it's great.
Right, but it's all relative to topography, and after that dam, there's a pretty steep descent. So my thought is that there's nothing there that's gonna be able to hold back that water. There's no floodplain that would allow it to spread out.
Well, the
without
floodplain is
providing-
all where the water is now, that's the floodplain.
But it's the elevation that holds the water back. It's the height of the berm. I mean, so.
When
okay.
they do the engineering, they
Yep.
reconstruct the channel so that they step it down nice and easy.
Yep.
It's not gonna be like there's a way to make, they have like longitudinal profiles and all that stuff, that they make it be a normal, what it should have been all along,
Yeah,
so.
but I guess my equivalent to the bucket idea would be if you took a bucket with 4 inches of water in it, and you drill a 1/2-inch hole 4 inches up, and then you dump another bucket in, you're only gonna get a release the size of the hole that's drilled, and you could contain almost an entire bucket, and that bucket would then be released over time. So what you're saying is you're taking a bucket and dumping it on the ground. So there's a little bit,
You're just removing the bucket.
yeah, just removing the bucket. So again, like I
But
would
all
like to
the
see.
inflow that's coming in,
Yep, I get that.
it's just like coming in, coming in, coming in.
Yep. And it just flows out.
And it flows out, but it's not gonna, if it's like a little bit wider, a little bit longer, it's not gonna change how it's going downstream from where it is now.
But right now, we have the ability for that to be contained because the outlet is only 12 or 13 feet wide, I'm just guessing. But that berm is 12 feet taller than the
I think,
elevation of water.
I think we could have this conversation, for a long time, and
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
really,
I know.
Provide anybody with any specific new information. Whatever we do, we're gonna have to have a lot more, obviously, information available to people. And I know that you've been waiting, Joy, for just a comment or two, so if you could do that, and then we're gonna go to you, Lucy, please.
Oh, I was just,
Are you just getting?
I have been in contact with a couple of fisheries biologists because I'm interested in what constitutes a cold water fishery. And Prince River going through there is a cold water fishery. And as of 2020, there were brook trout in there. Those are the native
Mhm.
trout, but they also stock the river.
Mhm.
But the two biologists that I talked to are both in favor, no matter what, of removing impoundments and
Mhm.
allowing the ability for the cold water fish to be able to move up and down a waterway. And even if there aren't many now, having it be open, there would be able to increase, the potential to increase their population, is my understanding from the people that I've talked to.
Lucy, if you just talk to us a bit about how did we originally get here?
Could I just,
Sure.
1 second, because I skipped over a question that I
I
said
find
I
this
was coming back to.
fascinating because when we asked the gentleman from the state if the current wildlife would live, he said majority would not. Clear as day. Like, he was like, no. And I would assume someone who does dams and who's done other dams, he might have some knowledge of real life knowledge. And he sat up there, it's on the video, and he said, majority of the current life will die. So we're talking all of the animals down there. We live down there, there's moose, deer, everything. He's like, well, they'll lose that. And that's what he said from the dam. Go back and watch it. So their take was, yes, later on some things might come back, but majority that's there right now will not survive. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm just saying what he
I
said.
think
He
what-
didn't think so.
What we should be aware of, is anything that has a capacity to move will go to where there is a resource. They're not gonna just sit there and die. They will find a resource. And it won't be that there's no water there, there will be. I believe firmly there'll be probably beavers, which moose love a wetland, so they're not gonna die.
I mean, probably used in a sense
The
of a
thing that-
scare tactic, kind of like the fact that it could flood ever, it's a scare tactic, so it's probably using back and forth.
But I think, the things I think of that might not survive are like macroinvertebrates in the muck. Like, they can't really move quick enough, so like product worms and stuff like that. But I don't think anything that has the ability to move is gonna actually sit there and die. They find their way, mostly.
Just like there may be a flood.
But we-
Sorry, but the chances of a flood are not gonna happen, so,
Well, I'm
yes,
only
they could
basing-
die, but there also could never be a flood. Just putting it there.
Okay, Lucy, if you could just give us sort of a historical perspective
All
of
right.
how it
I'm gonna
got
get
here.
out of the way, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Ricky, for being here.
Well, I know many of you know me personally or have heard of me, and I don't think anybody in Barre has more appreciation of our natural beauty and our history. And if you see my Facebook post, you'll know that. Not only on my personal Facebook post, but for the Barre Historical Society. So I'm going to speak both as a historian and as I am chair of the Barre Historical Commission and historian of the Barre Historical Society, lifelong resident of Barre. So, I'm going to, is this a camera here?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm going to show one picture from the 1938 hurricane and flood. When we speak of the potential of flooding on this river, this was my family's lifeblood and company, the Charles G. Allen Company, on the Prince River on School Street in the 1938 flood and hurricane. This is another photograph of it. The 1938 hurricane and flood devastated Barre, and most people hear about the Ware River flooding in Barre Plains and South Barre. But the one most damaged entity in that flood, the one with the highest dollar damage, was my family's former company, the Charles G. Allen Company on School Street, which was devastated when the dam on the old reservoir on the Prince River burst in 1938. So, I will tell you that I'm speaking both as a historian and as a person, although I was not around in 1938, will tell you that my family's history was very much impacted by the dam on the Prince River. So if there's one thing we can count on for the last 174 years of Barre's history, is that the dam on the Prince River, in what we called Old Reservoir, is going to be in the news every few years or every few decades. And it is almost never good news. And you speak about the potential of flooding. One reason I'm showing you these photos is I think that a lot of people now don't realize that it's not a potential of flooding, but there have been 2 devastating floods caused by the bursting of a dam at the old reservoir on the Prince River. So it's not a potential, it's history. So when we talk about this,
So the dam you're actually speaking of is actually a quarter of a mile closer past the old reservoir dam. That's the original dam that the Charles G. Allen used to power the facility.
excuse me,
that
the
fails.
Charles G. Allen Company never used the dam to power its water. It had no control over the dam that burst, okay? You can talk about whatever dam you want. There have been at least 3 dams there. It does not matter, let me, if you will, speak. A dam is something that creates power and influence. And if you talk about water rights in New England, you will know that water rights were one of the most important things in influence and privilege and money in New England. When you put a dam on a river, you create a power and an influence for the party above the dam because you're flooding their property. You create power and influence below the dam because you can cut off the water that these parties needed to power their water wheels, irrigate their fields, or whatever water, provide water for their families. So there have been laws even from colonial times about what happens with a dam.
Right, but the dam you're speaking of is not the old reservoir dam. The old reservoir dam never failed and was only removed back in the 60s and 70s. The dam you're speaking of is further down and is no longer even there. And if you walk down, you can still see remnants of it. At that time, that particular dam held back a small area that was extremely deep. So I don't know, and I'm trusting your history of it, but the facts don't line up to what you're saying with the history of the dam.
Well, I
The dam
haven't
never failed.
said too much already, okay. Sam?
I was under the impression that any issues with hurricanes or water were all resolved when the government came in and did something with the Barre Falls Dam.
Okay,
And
okay.
and that theoretically, because I live in there's other areas where there's water, that at one time there were problems and the government came in and theoretically resolved the problem.
Theoretically, perhaps, the Barre Falls Dam is on the Ware River. It is not on the Prince River. The Prince River comes into the Ware River in Barre Plains. The Barre Falls Dam controls flooding on the Ware River, but any tributary, such as the Prince River, that floods, such as in 1868 and 1938, with devastating effects, flows into the Ware River. And this is why dam potential failures, and I don't care if you're talking about the dam, do you know what year your dam was built in? 1851, 1868, 1938, it doesn't matter, they've all failed. And when that dam fails on the Prince River, the flowage comes down the Prince River, it hits the Charles G. Allen Company, devastates it. It hits every dam, such as the Panashoney Brothers Dam. It hits the Conant Mill Dam. It hits the Loring Dam. It hits Barre Plains, and it flows down the Ware River, where it joins, into Wheelwright, into Gilbertville, into Ware, into Palmer, where it joins the Chicopee River and flows through the Chicopee River into the Connecticut River, and all through Connecticut into Long Island Sound. And if you don't believe that, you can read all the news articles from the floods of 1938, 1954, and every other year. So when you're talking about a dam, you're not talking about an issue related to Barre alone.
Right.
You're talking about an issue that impacts everybody downstream from that dam.
Right.
And the reason I'm speaking to you tonight, not just as a historian, but as a person, even before it was long before I was born, my family and many other families were impacted by flooding on the Prince River because there was a dam, and I don't care if it was here or here or here on the Prince River, that failed. So, in 1851 to 1852, and this is when most mills and shops were powered by water wheels that depended on a water flow that was constant throughout the year. Those mills on the Prince River, which we all know in summer is like, nothing, that could not power their water wheels. So these mill owners on the Prince River got together and they purchased land in 1849 from Lyman A. Rice, and they built a dam. And one man was killed during the...
Is this the dam we're talking about?
No.
There have been at least 3 dams there, but within it doesn't matter. It's within, it impounds land
Yeah.
on the Prince River. If the dam fails, it wipes out anything below. It doesn't matter if it's here or there. There's nothing up there other than trees and forest. There was
So
farmland
is it,
before.
so is this part of, the Prince River is spring-fed up there? Where does it come from
The
before?
Prince River has two branches that
Mhm.
come down from a swamp.
Okay.
And I probably have, there's old maps from 1855 and on. You show two branches of the Prince River coming down up from near the Phillipston
Mm-hmm.
town line. They come down, and so the reservoir, it shows the same shape. And it doesn't matter whether it was the 1851 map, it shows, and I can probably show you a photograph. It's got the same conformation, basically in 1855 and in 1875. This is the 1875 map showing the conformation of the reservoir.
We'll just spread that around.
If you want to
It's very
just pass it
difficult.
around.
Yeah, it's very difficult to try to see it from here.
This is 20 years before the 1855 map of Barre, and it shows, it's hard to see because it's kind of like all green, but it shows essentially the same shape. So they built a dam across it in 1851 to 1852. The dam allowed them to turn a wheel that would allow water to come out in the dry months, that would release water to provide flow for the water wheels. In September 1868, there was a horrendous flood. It's amazing that nobody was killed. But in 1868, that dam burst. Now, I will say the Charles G. Allen Company did not exist at that time, but the casualties of that flood, which happened at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which is why nobody was killed, because there was nobody working, included 6 mills, 6 dams, 6 bridges, roads, and fields. If we were talking about current monetary values, that would have been $5,530,000 in damages. And once again, it's miraculous that nobody was killed. Glen Valley Cemetery was wiped out. So the town's bridges and roads accounted for about a third of that amount, which would be $1,843,333 in today's terms. The others amounts were the private mill owners, and there was no flood insurance in 1868. That amount had to be covered by the private mill owners, so you would think, why would they want to ever do this again? But they rebuilt it. So we go on until, into the 20th century, most companies were not powered by water wheels. They had other ways of powering. But in 1933, there were 2 deeds where the Prince River Corporation purchased the dam area, and the trustees of the Prince River Associates purchased the land that is overflowed by the dam, that is the reservoir. And that deed talks about it going up to the high water level of the reservoir. And these 2 deeds have been really problematic for the town and for anybody else trying to deal with the dam, because since 1978, nobody has been able to determine who the Prince River Corporation people are that own the dam. And I have determined from my own research that the 3 people in the town's tax records have all been dead since before 1998. And so we have to question who is paying the taxes for the dam, for that property. It's definitely not a nonprofit, so they should be paying taxes. One of the problems since 1978, when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers determined that this dam was highly hazardous, is that they could not find the owners. Well, they couldn't find the owners because they were very elderly and within a short time were deceased. I am not going to go through with any further motions of who owns it now. You know, you'd have to have a legal search going through. Were there heirs?
According to the state that they've done such a search and there is no.
There is not.
Yeah.
So there's been no taxes paid. So this question, is this a tax title property? Should the town have this by tax title? But there is nobody who's been paying taxes since more than 50 years, okay? Nobody has been taking care of the dam for more than 50 years. So these people bought that property in 1933. It was no longer needed for industrial purposes, which is what it was designed for. In 1938, in the hurricane and flood, I've passed on a couple of photographs, the dam burst. And the impact on the people below the dam was extreme. It was worse than 1868. In 1868, the flood stopped where the bridge goes over the Prince River by the ice house. Okay, that used to be the restaurant. It didn't stop there this time. It went down. It took out everything along Loring Road into Barre Plains and joined the flood of the Ware River, making it that much worse as it flowed into Hardwick, Ware, and Palmer, and then down eventually to the Long Island Sound. So my family's company was devastated, and only by the I won't say Herculean efforts of the employees and family members was the Charles G. Allen Company, which was one of the town's biggest employers and taxpayers, was that company preserved. So when we're talking about floods, we're not just talking about, you know, homes destroyed, families, you know, in peril. We're talking about the loss to the town of tax dollars and loss of jobs. Fortunately, they were able to recover, but in 1978, the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers declared the dam to be highly hazardous. So of course the Charles G. Allen Company had their radar up like, oh my God, it's going to happen again. And despite their efforts and the states, even in 1978, they couldn't figure out who the Prince River Corporation was and how to get them to repair the dam. So they declared, the state found that the dam had severe seepage occurring along the toe of the dam and the dike, and that the concrete spillway was spalled and broken. The state recommended that the reservoir level be immediately lowered, that repairs be immediately made, and that a regular inspection and maintenance schedule be established. Well, this is many, many years ago. They haven't found the owners, and as far as I know, there was no maintenance and no schedule of repairs made. They also added that the wood frame buildings of the Charles G. Allen Company below the dam would be severely damaged, and there was potential for loss of life should the dam fail. They did, at that time, open the gates of the dam to lower the reservoir level. And when Gloria came through in September of 1985, the Allen Company actually sent employees up, even though it was not their dam, which is one of the problems of having a dam, is the people downstream usually do not have any control over what happens there. They went up and opened the dam so that
they lowered the spillway.
They lowered the spillway, so the pressure on the dam was not there, and it did not overtop, and it did not breach. So in 1985, the Charles G. Allen Company and everybody else downstream was not impacted because in 1938, when the Prince River Dam burst, it took out part of the dam of the Charles G. Allen Company, which had its own dam. And the state said if the dam bursts on the Prince River Reservoir, it will take out the Charles G. Allen Company dam. Once you have one dam that goes out, it's going to take out all the dams that go down the river. And therefore, you've got a bigger problem.
Thank you, Lucy. I so appreciate your history knowledge. I try myself, but you're the best.
Well, I'm telling you this as a historian, but also to provide you with the aspect and the input of somebody whose family suffered, even though I obviously was not alive in I hope it's obvious, I wasn't alive in 1938. But I do recall the 1985 trauma. I mean, this was huge. If this dam bursts again, it was not the same dam that burst in 1938 because we have been told, and I have not found any records, that the Prince River Corporation, after the failure of the dam in 1938, rebuilt a dam, which is what I believe is the current dam. So how did they build it? Even in 1938, there were standards for dams being built. There were standards, there were laws about the people below and above the dam. I can't find a record of this. The corporation no longer exists. We don't have records of how they built the dam, how well they built the dam, to what standards they built the dam. But within 40 years, it was declared highly hazardous by the state and by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So I guess, there have been some good things, very good things, and you've mentioned them all, and all of these things about the trout, the turtles, the beavers. As you all know, I love all those things too. In like 1999 to 2000, we had an organization called the Upper Ware River Watershed Association. Don Rich from Barre Plains and his wife Ginny. We had Quabbin students going up. They did a complete survey up the Prince River from Barre Plains up to the upper part. They cleaned it out. It was an amazing adventure, and the town created a wastewater treatment plant which greatly improved the water quality in the Prince River. It went from Class A to Class B. I don't know where it is now, but as of 2000, it had improved greatly through their efforts. And the state started buying land up there for the Prince River Wildlife Management Area, which is now 750 acres, but none of that land is right on the reservoir. The East Quabbin Land Trust has a 70-acre Prince River preserve, and back in the 1990s, I was a board member of the East Quabbin Land Trust, and I will tell you that one of the big problems is that the reservoir itself is defined by this deed that says that up to the high water mark, this land is owned by one party. If you breach the dam, or by whatever means, natural or unnatural, you're going to have people who think they have waterfront property who do not.
Well, true.
And that's one reason the East Quabbin Land Trust did not buy more land, and one reason that the state did not buy more land. So I'm going to say now, I understand your concerns. I understand all of the natural concerns, the flow. I'm not into what degree temperature the trout need to exist. I'm into who is safe below the dam, how, we have natural beauty there. It's not very accessible to most people, but it's natural. But having a dam there is not natural. the natural beauty was the Prince River before it was dammed. And I think that's what we need to consider is, you know, the town did not submit the dam as a historical asset when it did its inventory to the state in the 1970s. It considered a historical asset, and the town and the state has agreed in its 2008 reconnaissance report that the historical value is in the Prince River corridor, which starts with the mills, the Charles J. Allen Company, down there, and it had many recommendations for how the town could increase this as a historical asset. The dam itself is not a historical asset. The waterway above it is not natural, it's man-made. We have an issue of ownership, so that I mean, I understand it's very difficult, but to me it seems like taxes must not have been paid for 50 years, which would be a tax title issue. If the town owns it, if you read about the liability of a town owning a dam, it is huge. You, as Becky said, you've got like this $15,000 emergency plan you have to have should the dam be breached. You have annual inspections, reports to the state. Is this something the town wants to take on? And yet, I mean, I have to say we have to do something about this. I mean, you know, this has been 50 years that we have known the dam has been highly critical condition, and 50 years where we've known we don't know who owns it. So I hope that we can find a resolution. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you.
I think that our hope was that we would have an opportunity to hear because we've heard about from the state the options we have that they will pay for. They will pay for total removal, they'll pay for repair, and they'll pay for restoring the situation to its sort of more natural sort of watershed. So we know the three options that we have. We know that there is a cadre of folks who have very strong feelings about each one of those situations. This board feels, and I'm going to let John speak more specifically to this,
sure.
But this board feels that it would probably be less than prudent for us to put ourselves in a situation and just say, we should do X without further input. We could certainly make people in this room probably happy if we chose your X. We know, however, that we are committing the community, not just for tomorrow or for 2 years, but for the next, in perpetuity, for taking care of this property. And so we've thought about what could we do to, one, find as much information as we can to make sure everybody in the community understands the situation and what it would mean if we do either one of those options. So John, I'm going to pass it to you for some conversation
Sure.
about an option that we have.
Yeah, so just to start off, the opinion that I've come to personally on this, looking at it, is that the Office of Dam Safety has given us 4 options, essentially. We know one of them we're not considering, which would be rebuilding the dam even higher to what it used to be. But they essentially break down into 2 categories: maintaining the impounded water and returning to a river. From what I can see, based on what the engineers have said, all of these options provide improved safety over what's there now, whether it's through additional inspections throughout because it is maintained, or whether it's because there's nothing to maintain because it's restored.
So you're basically
All of
saying
them are safe options.
A do-nothing option is not an option, okay?
Yeah, we have to select one of these 4 options, and all of them that they provided, in one way or another, provide safety for those downstream. In my understanding of what they're providing, I don't want to say I understand all the ecological aspects of it. I'm doing my best to understand them, but I understand there's, some benefits and some benefits to one category, some benefits to the other category. So what I believe this really does come down to a matter of preference by the town of, do we want to be responsible for a dam for this impounded water and maintain it, or do we want to restore it to a river? Both are safe, which is my first concern, and both are viable options. So I do believe it's a matter of preference. Do we want our money to go there? So what I'm putting forward is a question to put on the next election. So it would be a non-binding question, because legally it's much simpler to do a non-binding question, as I understand it. And obviously, we don't really normally do ballot questions on our local ballot, but we do have some ability to do that. I have one drafted up that I want to share to get feedback on, so that we can hopefully move forward at one of our next meetings if we want to go this direction with it.
We should make it clear that in order to get it on a ballot, okay, in April, we have to make a decision to move to a ballot, probably within the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You just quick, Corey?
So I was gonna recommend at the town meeting, I don't know if you could do a quick 10-minute presentation, both for and against removing it. I've heard compelling arguments on both sides. I like the ballot question because you get more participation, but you're not gonna get.
Well, we would do several hearings.
Nobody shows up.
I know,
Town
but-
meeting, at least there's a couple hundred people there, and you could get the biggest audience
Well,
at once.
the problem is that we worry about is obviously the time frame that the state has given us. They've been pretty generous in saying, okay, you guys want to talk about it again, okay, you guys want to talk about it again, but they're really seeking from us a direction, because we are part of a grant-funded program that we will be compensated for one of the things that John sort of just described to you. I don't want to set a situation up where we don't have a plan that's, going to be executed in a reasonable time frame, and saying, oh, the end of June will let you know. Because that's really kind of too late, and I even worry that early April, is probably stretching our thing, but it would give us at least some idea.
And then we have at least a solid understanding of the opinion of a broader audience of the town, which I think is
I love the
critical
idea
in
of
this.
the ballot question, because you'll get more people to
Yeah.
participate.
How are you gonna educate the town about, people go into the voting booth and go, yes, no,
Well,
I'll
listen,
say
I
no.
would
Yeah.
tell you that the situation is that there are people who are truly interested in this. They really are. They have opinions about it. And our obligation is to provide opportunities for people to garner information, to put things in writing that people can, if they can't attend something, that they can read about. That's our obligation. Certainly, I would suspect that people on every side of this issue are gonna have something to say. And they're gonna show up. I think they're gonna show up, but they are gonna speak to it. I think that, otherwise, you just say, okay, you three, and this three may be a different three by April, okay? You decide. Well, I have an opinion about it, but I feel very, that it's very shallow, because, as John says, any one of those things is public safety. So what do I do? Pick the one I like? Pick the one that I think is more what the nipmunks like? So I really feel that the board deserves an opportunity to get some feedback from the community, some honest feedback from the community. So, John, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Before we go any further, I can read out at least the draft of what that question would look like. So question 1 would be, do you approve of the non-binding directive summarized below? The summary includes, this proposed non-binding directive would direct the Select Board of Barre, Massachusetts to issue an opinion to the Massachusetts Office of Dam Safety that is in favor of retaining the current water level of the old reservoir through means of repair or reconstruction of the old reservoir dam located near Flaherty Road along the Prince River and any associated infrastructure. A yes vote would direct the Select Board to issue an opinion that the old reservoir dam should be repaired to a level that keeps the reservoir at the current water level. A yes vote would also direct the Select Board to begin the process of taking ownership of and responsibility for the old reservoir dam and begin the acquisition of property and/or rights of access to the dam as necessary for required maintenance, with construction costs to be provided through state funding and property acquisitions, rights of access, and annual maintenance to be the responsibility of the town to fund. A no vote would direct the Select Board to not issue an opinion that the old reservoir dam should be retained, and the old reservoir would be restored to a river with construction costs to be provided through state funding. So that is a draft of what that question would look like, and it would be a matter of getting that information out. There's a lot of people
Yeah.
who, in this room, who are very passionate on both sides, who I believe are very interested in getting their side of the information out. We can also have hearings. I know maybe people aren't showing up as much to those hearings, but they will be recorded, they will be available, so.
Now, however you write that question
Mhm.
will prejudice the answer. You've written that question with a lot of explanation that in favor of keeping the dam, and one sentence.
I disagree with you. I think if anything, it shifts it the other way. Because
So-
it says, it's gonna cost you this, 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 which is real.
This is as impartial as I could get. I do have a couple of copies if you want to look at it specifically.
What I think is
And that's why we need feedback.
the no vote explanation
Mm-hmm.
could also offer the ecological benefits, for
Yeah,
instance.
and we're happy for input.
And the fact that it will cost the town nothing ever
And I guess
is
you also,
an important piece of information.
So, I mean, I think we would need a much better defined exact reference of what the ecological impacts are if we were going to put it as part of the question. I don't think we have that well defined enough. We know cost-wise that either way, construction costs will be handled by the state. And on the yes one, that the property acquisition, rights of access, and annual maintenance would be the responsibility of the town to fund.
Matt?
Just two comments, and it's probably minor, just making sure we write it correct. But
Yeah.
the yes vote doesn't actually authorize you to start pursuing purchase of, because you still gotta.
Initiate the
town meeting
process,
to get
yes.
Yes.
So
The
you
actual
just wanna
funding
be
would
careful
still-
how you word that, just to make sure you're
Yeah.
dotting your I, crossing your T,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
misrepresenting we can act starting
Yeah, we
tomorrow.
And legal will, would still look it over.
That's the only, and then
Yeah.
the second part is, a ballot, you gotta be careful dumping too much information into the question.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible, because we do have a couple significant parties that have their opinions,
Mm-hmm.
would you be okay if each party, the ones that represent make it a river and one that says repair it to the existing height,
Yep.
offer something to you so those two could be added as a supplement?
Like they do in the
Add-
state.
Yes.
Like-
Right, kinda
Yes.
like when they
That-
mail out the ballot questions and you
Yep.
got your yes and your no.
We would want something like that included, but that would technically not be part of the question. It would
No,
be
but it would just
an
be like an
addendum to
addendum
it,
for
yes.
reference or
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
That's a good idea.
that allows both sides to kind of voice what they think is important on their side of it.
Right, essentially it would say those in favor say this, those opposed say this, and give some basic overviews of what each side is, and that could go, be distributed
And
appropriately.
when would you need that? So like,
Well, we would need the.
I'm just bringing
yeah.
stuff up. I'm not saying you have the answer today.
The question going on to the ballot itself, we need to have put together more quickly.
Just because of logistics of what is required for the town clerk.
Yep.
Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Maureen. We've had, like you say, a lot of time, and we've enjoyed the luxury of the state's patience. But over that time, even if we do all this, I feel we're still putting the cart before the horse, because as the board sat there over some of this and deliberated, I forget who exactly stated it, but they said, we're not water engineers. So a good strategy after that, over that course of a year and a half, year, whatever it was, would have been to have a hydrologist and get an opinion. Because I'm concerned this could end up going the other way. The capacity that's left in the aquifer of the Prince River that feeds the wells, we know that happens. It happens through groundwater. We haven't had a hydrologist's opinion, which all this time, while the state's been patient with us, we have had the time to do. The first meeting, I had suggested that. The state guy sat right there and said, we don't know if it's gonna affect your wells. At that point, they didn't even understand that it was part of our water infrastructure. So that whole thing, Maureen,
Well,
makes me wonder.
Well,
If we did
I don't
due
know.
diligence, even at the state level.
Well, I think
We
that,
have not,
I think there is some
we have
information
not
out
done
there.
our own due diligence.
Well, I think there's-
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I think that there is some information that we do have access to about the hydrology of our wells. It's not as probably as specific and as direct as you would like it to be, or maybe I would like it to be. And there's certainly, some time for us to have a hydrologist come in here and give people his or her best opinion as to what is going on with where our wells are located and so on. I don't think that certainly the Prince River is not the only, place where we have groundwater that's feeding those wells. I mean, the Ware River, watershed is the most dynamic we have in the area. And so, water people that I've spoken with said, no, it's the Ware River for you. And I don't know if that's true.
No.
Yeah. Anyway,
No.
so that being said, we hear that, but I guess we're just basically saying that we're not gonna take a vote tonight, but we are moving to our opinion that we need to get more broad-based public input into this, situation. And so whatever decision or whatever the community feels after getting as much information as we can garner for them, that gives this board direction as to best next step. If we are gonna take on purchasing, buying that, the town doing that, and then monitoring it, managing it, and maintenance, we have to let the town know, hey, people, this is what we're doing. And so everybody says, okay, that's cool, we're okay with that, we think this is a wonderful asset. And then I'm gonna tell you that this board feels strongly that if we are going to maintain and have this so-called recreational-like access, that we want access. We wanna have public access to this area, which means a lot more effort on our part, from a public perspective, to say, okay, how do we get access there? How do we make it so a family can go and picnic there easily? It's hard, it's a little more of a, challenge, but.
That's not something the state's gonna cover as part
No,
of
the state's not gonna cover that, but, so. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, so again, the public access, it keeps making it sound out like this is like a private refuge for a few people. There is public access, but the unique aspect of the site is the fact that it's not developed. If you wanna go out on a boat and see a bunch of houses there, it ain't pretty late, there's tons of ponds around. The fact that, the thing that makes this area special is the fact that it's not developed. And nobody's trying to keep people out. East Quabbin Land Trust, Fish and Game, they all own property around this reservoir. So I just wanna make that very clear, because I keep feeling like this made it seem like this is not a public, resource.
So,
But the other thing-
just to address that,
Yeah.
there is no public access to it. There is private access that is open to the public, which is East Quabbin Land Trust and other organizations like that. But for us to take possession of this and maintain it, we do need either permanent right of access, or we need to purchase land to get there. We need to have a permanent system in place. We can't be at the mercy of a private organization or even a public organization outside of the town's control as to whether or not we can get to our asset, if we take that as an
That's
asset.
what you allude to, because you're making it sound like not access or public space for the maintenance of the dam, but public access for future use. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there is currently public access to this resource that anybody else in town could use. But the other thing too, that we've heard a lot of people, that professionals come in and they were speaking to the virtues of removing the dam, but we haven't heard anybody say what would be the effects if we remove this dam and we get a major storm surge, what kind of capacity we have downstream, because right now, this infrastructure has been acting in default as a stormwater management. I know it wasn't designed for that, everybody keeps saying, but it wasn't designed for that, but it does act as. So right now, if that is removed and we get storm surges, I don't believe that, I haven't found any information saying that a cleared stream channel has the same capacity. That's why they built the Berry Falls Dam, in order to hold back and impound water during stormwater events. And if we do build a dam in the future, I do think that needs to be addressed, that this should be a dual purpose structure. And the other thing too is if it is removed, that early, going back to the beavers, that in the early colonies, they exterminated all the beavers. It wasn't until 1930 that beavers were reintroduced in the Berkshires. And they've been slowly migrating across the state. So when we look at these streams and they're clean flowing, we always in our 70, 80 years of life assume that what we see is the current state and always has been. That beavers had a major role in having dams staggered up these rivers and impounding water and acting as recharge. And my question too is, if we remove this dam and beavers come in, and beavers can build dams 20 feet wide, hundreds of feet long, and they build a structure back up that's not significant to what's there, but is still holding back a massive amount of water, who's up there maintaining, monitoring that? I think the liability is gonna be greater if we don't manage this and we just kind of leave it to go back to.
Well, that will be a good point for you to make, if, you know, in order
Yeah,
to.
but I think we need to get the professionals in to speak
Well-
about the value of the stormwater management
Yeah.
system in that location.
Lucy?
I'd just like to add that this current dam was supposedly rebuilt in 1938 after the flood by a party that no longer exists and apparently never had inspections done and was declared highly hazardous by 1978, 40 years after it was built. In no way is it designed to be a flood control dam. It may have incidentally served that purpose, but boy, do not ever think that this dam is protecting us from flooding downstream.
One more question, then we're gonna move on,
I
okay?
just want clarification, just. I don't feel I have access to that pond with my kayak. So I don't have the same access as the people living on the pond.
I can't access the motorboat in the residence.
I didn't ask for a motorboat. I said I can't even carry my kayak because I gotta go half a mile through the woods, through the East Quabbin to get to the shore. So it's not public access like other people that live on the water have. So you were kind of referencing it as if it's the same access, and I just wanted to clarify, for those that don't know, it's not quite the same access. I can hike to it, I can bring a fishing pole, that's all I can do. I can do that to a river. So when it comes to the public access from my point of view, because I'm just bringing up when it comes to the benefit to the town as a whole recreationally, it's very limited without better public access. That's all I'm bringing up, because otherwise, I mean, I still always go down to the Ware River hoping they still let me in, because they keep telling me I'm gonna have to go somewhere in the woods again to use a kayak launch in the river, because the state's already making those rules. So what I'm just saying is I don't have a lot of pond access as it is, really, like in town like you think you would. So I do understand it, but I'm just saying that doesn't limit the town, if they're gonna pay for maintaining this dam, should have a better access to using it. That's my only point.
I just don't want it destroyed. You know, the natural.
And I understand that.
Yeah, I don't want
I'm
to
not
ruin it.
saying put a commercial, clam strip place down on the water. I'm just saying, give me a 20-foot gravel road with 5 parking spots on the right where people can pull in and they just gotta go 40 feet to the water with their kayak.
Which could be.
That's more what I
There's
meant.
already some trails that most people wouldn't drive their cars down, but they are wide enough to do so. So with maintaining them and doing just what you said, there's already.
Right, it's just creating it now, and then the policy on how we maintain it.
And just having public, and having the town own it
Yeah.
to control the access.
Okay, I'm gonna try to wrap it up, okay, because we've been.
Well, before you wrap it up, you need to get something.
I do, Stan, you know I would never wrap it up without one more comment from you. I have.
I have more of a question like logistics, so say if the state funds to fix it, okay? Up to,
Fix,
you know,
repair,
right,
or review, remove.
Does the same people go and inspect their own work 5 years later? Like, look, what I mean, so like, are they building it, and all of a sudden they're like, you're coming, check it out, and then give the bill?
I'm assuming it's all on the same group of people, yes.
Okay, that is-
Well, they'll have a punch
Very,
list
it's a-
once
Yeah,
it's.
oh, yeah, they're gonna-
It's a PE
yeah,
consultant you're
yeah,
calling in
yeah.
as part of that process, so.
I mean, it's different people, but
Right, so
it's still a state
the,
mandated.
right, the state would pay for the construction, but then as soon as that construction's done, that final punch list is cleared, it is the town's responsibility. We would take ownership of that land, we would take ownership of the dam. We are now responsible for review, for maintenance. We could use the same engineering company to come out. We could find a different one depending on our preference and who's,
And then we take on.
quotes that we could get.
The town takes on the liability, which means we have to go to the insurance company, and we say to the insurance company, we've got this dam, it's now fixed, we're gonna have some recreation on it, and we're gonna maintain it, and what is our liability? do we have liability if a swimmer is somehow caught in a log or something and got injured, somebody falls and trips, on this area? I mean, yeah, we're gonna have some liability, meaning the town. And so we need to, evaluate that.
And we have
that.
started looking into that to
Yeah.
have a number ahead of time.
Yes.
Um,
That's why I'm wondering, like,
So far, they're
that.
basically telling us that we don't have enough information for them, so we're going back and forth a little with that, but
Okay, I think that when it comes
Trying to get
like,
that number
funding
hammered out.
Or like a valid question, most people wanna know, what's it gonna cost me? What's it gonna cost
Mhm.
this?
Right.
So it would be nice to have, even like, I know it's gonna all be estimates, but I mean, when you hear like, 300,000, what does that really mean to one taxpayer? Like, so I think that would just really help the people make those decisions.
We can tell you, how much do you have to raise and appropriate in the town to put $1 on the tax rate? We can give you that information.
That's what I'm hoping to
Yeah,
come up with that.
and I'm not saying this is going to be such extraordinary expenses, we should all run to the hills, I don't say that. But I
some
would,
people might, like, see if they
Yeah,
hear, say
but
it's
I-
gonna cost the town, they
and
might
I,
say,
and I
well,
think
I'm voting no
and I
right
think
away.
we'd have to put we'd have to decide, are we gonna have any kind of swimming there? Or do we gonna post it and say, no swimming? Because we have an obligation, if we own it, to do some sort of testing on it on a regular basis to ensure that it's safe to swim. And so there's things that, as we look into this from the insurance perspective, that the insurance companies, they go like this thinking, hey, this is a great policy. So our insurance obligations would be substantial. And Stan, you have one more last question you promised.
Thanks. I think we may be missing the point. I think the federal government received lots of money for lots of different purposes. So they all sat around in Boston or wherever it was. And they said, what are we gonna do with all this money? He said, well, we got a bunch of dams that need some service. Maybe we should think about the dams. So they get together a committee and they go from town to town to town.
That's what happened.
And giving people the alternative, fear-mongering everybody, telling Lucy that her house is gonna blow down if there's 16 inches of water. Or saying, and from our perspective, we have wells that are not operating well, and we would hate to give up a water resource, and whatever resource we have, and find out that we're gonna come to the town and we're going to say, our well is running dry, and the only thing that happened was you did something with, the state came in and did something with the reservoir, and now we have a problem, and we want the town to come and re-drill our wells. So we have a lot more issues, and I personally think whatever we need to do, or whatever we are going to do, I think the state has an obligation to maintain this, not us. We have a problem with owning 5 fire trucks, which we're gonna learn about at the next town meeting. We cannot commit ourselves to spending more money than we can generate. And as you mentioned at one of the last meetings, at this particular time in life, in the past, 90% of the people have paid their property taxes, and now you use the term 80% or so.
I didn't say 80%, I said in the upper, it's down from what it has been in
It's
the
down.
past.
So people are having difficulty paying bills, and we're thinking about going forward and committing this town to a long life responsibility when we're worried about the water that we drink every day.
So can I just understand, Sam, are you advocating for
I know.
not taking any funding and leaving it as it is?
No, I'm advocating that we be firm with the state and say, this is what we have determined
So
as a town.
my understanding
Let me finish.
is,
This is what we have determined as a town, and this is, as citizens of Barre, we would expect the state to handle all the maintenance going forward. That's a smart idea.
Well, we can
so
have
what
that
the state has
conversation,
said to
but
us basically
we're out of
is
the
that
grant program.
we don't own this land, And if we don't tell them we want to save it and we want to take responsibility for it, they're going to take it out and return it to a river.
Yeah.
That is the null option, is that the state will do
I
it
don't
anyway.
think they're
'Cause we
gonna
don't
do
own
that.
that land. We
That's
can't
just-
tell them not to.
I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just making you fearful that we have to make a decision. Do you wanna buy a new car? Do you wanna buy an old car? You better hurry up because there's another customer coming down to buy another car.
Well, I think their point of view is they have a program and they have some funding to help and assist communities to manage these circumstances that they find themselves in with dams that probably in many cases are not owned by anybody. So they're making an effort to say to us, here's some of the options you have as a community. Why don't you pick one, and we're gonna help you fund this part of it, this part of it. If you decide to do this, which is to create, buy the land and do those things, you're gonna own doing that. You can do that. This is gonna cost you, we're gonna do everything, but you're gonna spend money to preserve it and to take care of it over time. Seems like a reasonable thing for them to say. Being a taxpayer from the state as well as being a taxpayer locally, either way, guys, we're paying for this. We're paying for this. And so when it's.
I think we've had enough, and we ought to be smarter.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you, and I wish there was only intellect that would allow me, or this board, or even members of this community, it would be just the intellect of one or more of us, that could all of a sudden say, we're not paying that, we're not doing that. Because that would be great, but that's just not the way, unfortunately maybe, that government works. So we look at this as an obligation that we have to the community to take the opportunities that are available to us to fix what the state has designated as a high-risk problem. We can do a number of different things. Some of them are cost, okay, boom, the cost is made, we're done, we walk away. Others say, no, we wanna do this with it, and we're not gonna walk away, we're going to preserve it. Others things, let, as they say, Swift River go. They let Swift River go, and they called it the Quabbin Reservoir. It took 5 or 6 towns, and it's away. Guess what? The water's in Boston. Nobody sat around and worried about our wells.
Right.
And nobody sat around worried about them now. But my concern just is, I think the most important thing I've heard this evening is more information needs to be available. We need to have some hydrology somebody, okay, who has some insight into our well issues, which I don't think are as impacted as we think by this area of Prince River, but I could be dead wrong. And I think having an opportunity on a ballot to get diverse opinions out and to provide information, like here's one side, you can vote for this and you can vote for that, and have people who are proponents of those decisions write those things up, then taken by somebody who's an objective party to say, is this really a reasonable argument, or is this persuasive, is this junk? Because we can be really good junk writers, some of us. So we do that, we get the best opportunity to provide people with the best, information that they have, and then we use that as a guide to make a decision about what to do with this property.
Maureen, isn't this the reason why we have someone like Tony Berthium or the other party or the other people? I'm not saying that he's the key, but people in that position in the government should be at one of our meetings, and we need to ask them, how can you help us? When we needed a police station, somehow Steve Brewer came up with $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying we need another Steve Brewer, but maybe we do need someone to contact in the government.
I'm very happy to contact.
To assist us.
I am very happy to contact, Representative Berthium or Senator Durant. I would tell you. And I don't say this with any malevolent intent, but understand, 2 representatives we have are both Republicans, and sometimes it's not as helpful. I hate to say it, it's a legislative body that is, heavily Democratic. We do have opportunities, though, to look at those individuals who work very hard for us, Representative Berthium and Senator Durant, and say, we need your help. How can you help us? Understand, any individual person it's a struggle for them to just all of a sudden, because there's a whole bunch of towns standing in a situation just like us, And so they're not gonna make this one, one specific piece of legislation for Barre. We're happy to do that. I'm just telling you that that is pretty hard to sell when you say to the state, well, I know you're paying for one of the 3 choices, but we want even more. I think we'll stand in line, and I don't wanna end up not being in this line anymore, and we just have a high-risk dam and everybody's going. Because the town's not gonna do this, you know that. Mr. Kane, one last comment, promise me?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time. First, for the liability issue, if it was a recreational resource, I think it's 310 CMR that removes that liability possibility for the town. Recreational use of anyone's land, even a private citizen, if they open it up to recreation, then that goes away. And secondly, we spoke just now about Durant and Berthium. The way we could make that work, even though maybe they're Republicans, oh well, is to also copy Ann Goby's Office of Rural Affairs. When 3 people in the state are looking at that, it is a way, chances are that at least one of them is gonna pick it up and feel as though it's an issue that they're familiar with.
Yeah.
And Ann being in that new job,
Helps us.
she knows us out here.
Yeah.
She knows what we've been through. I think she even had something to do with the possible design of the new well. That seems to ring a bell for me. I might be wrong.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Quick.
Quick follow-up on that. My personal
Yes,
preference
sir.
is I would like to use those 3 people to get more funding for the schools
Me
than to
too.
worry about
Yeah.
one off-moment damn thing that they can say, oh, I helped Barry, I don't have to listen again for 3 years. I'd rather focus on schools and the lack of funding and the state just deferring those costs down, and they're not even close. The state isn't even close to understanding the impact of inflation, because if you look at their policies, they're all the same number of policies based on procurement. I mean, it's still the same rules, 2,000, 10,000, 25,000, 50,000. They didn't change any of those numbers for procurement, but everything now is 10,000 or more. So your whole procurement process is out the window. They're not even paying attention. That's where I'd rather them spending their time, and if I get their ear, I'd rather talk about that than this. That's just my personal opinion, because they're only gonna listen so much about what Barry cares about.
And just to let you know that on the 8th, the board, we have a posted meeting, some of us will be available for that. And we'll be attending with the Quabbin Regional School District and working on exactly some of the issues that he's brought up. So we're also very concerned about that, because 50–60% of our budget's going to schools. And the state has got to step it up. They have a formula that no longer works. The inflation factor stuff is just criminal, especially for the cities. I mean, you guys are really getting hit in the cities. And we know that, and so we're working on that as well. And I would just say, we're very concerned about this opportunity that we have. We don't want to lose the opportunity to at least have the state come in and do one of the choices, because we don't want to leave people in jeopardy, and we don't want to leave environments in shambles. We don't want to do any of that. We'd like to make enough information available so, people have a choice, and they can give us some insight in April, and we move immediately after that.
Could I just add this, at least as of a few years ago, there were more than 1,500 dams in a similar situation to the Prince River Dam. This is not unusual, and something like 60 municipalities own these dams. This is not unusual. This is across the state. There are tons of highly hazardous dams the state is trying to fix.
And bridges.
Yes, so I'm all for trying to get the help we can, but we're not special. We're just like everybody else,
Okay, you promised me, you're the last one, right?
I have 2, I want to just check that someone is taking responsibility to contact this hydrologist to.
Well, the board will take responsibility for that. And if any one of you, like you, has a name maybe that you can share with us, we'll obviously hunt around for some names that we think would be useful folks, but we definitely will we'll make every effort to get somebody in front of us to take a look at what they know about Barry's hydrology. And like you say, building the Barry Falls Dam was a big thing, and it was a big thing after, several, bad floods down in the area, so.
We also had a dam removed in this Riverways program in 2008 at the upper Cooks Canyon Galloway Brook
Okay.
Dam, which I was involved in as an abutter,
Yeah.
not through any historical or any other thing. It went very smoothly, it was done very nicely.
It went back to river?
There were concerns, but I don't think, how many people know that the upper Cooks Canyon Galloway Brook Dam was removed in 2008?
I found out on the joy today.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming and your
Yep,
time
last
and
thing I'll say
attention.
on this, we have a handful of copies of this draft. I know, some people might want to go through it, recommend some edits before we finalize this, hopefully the next time we
And
meet.
it will go to legal before.
It'll go to legal, but we also want to hear recommendations, and ideally, if everyone thinks it favors the other side, then it's hopefully balanced. So, then that means I did my job right.
Exactly.
So, we'll set these over there if anyone wants to go. There's only a handful, and we'll get some out digitally as
All
well.
of you who have nothing to do, we are going to have a meeting.
All right, on to new business.
I don't
Yeah,
have a lot. It's
okay.
been quiet the last 2 weeks. I just have a grant.
It's because I disappeared for a bit.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Sorry.
I'm sure you
Not
didn't
behaving
expect all
for a
this.
month.
Well, I feel like I didn't provide enough information.
I never even had another chance. Big friends.
I need like wildlife biologists.
No, you do, but if you know somebody that, can really walk people through it, I think that's important.
It's hard, because these are complex systems. You can say with certainty one thing or the other. Exactly. Nothing's gonna die, everything's gonna live. There's things like,
But it's wildlife, it's just gonna be a transition.
yeah.
Thank you.
It just transitions to from a pond-based
Ecosystem.
Anyway, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
You have my card
you.
if you have questions that come up.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned?
Okay, if we could go now to, we're going to continue our meeting, town administrator report.
It's been a quiet, it's been a couple quiet, yes, because of the holidays. As we all know, we wrapped up ARPA last week, so that was good. And then I just want to say that we ended up getting an earmark grant for a new pickup truck for the fire department for $70,000.
Okay.
So we will be working on that. I've been working with
That'd be
the,
good. Thank you.
thank
too.
you.
So will we get that fire truck within a reasonable time?
This,
or-
we already are actually working on it. This was one that I was waiting to hear that they had the funds. Then I had called, and finally we ended up getting the confirmation. So we've been working with the fire chief, and this for the fire truck for $70,000 for the grant, the earmark
And I
grant.
hear you.
Pickup truck.
Pickup truck, yes, not a
Oh, yeah,
engine.
I said pickup truck. I read
Pickup
it just
truck.
like it says. Purchase for a new pickup truck for the fire department, $70,000. So this would actually come fast, so we just have to go ahead, I gotta get it signed back, and then once we end up getting it, I actually spoke with James today too, he worked with the chief as well, and we already have one already kinda picked out, so once that happens, we'll get it, cause it's an earmark, so we wanna make sure we take advantage and get it done quickly.
Okay,
So,
great.
that's all I got.
Okay, well, I realize, like you say, it's been a quiet 2 weeks.
Yes, but this was good news,
Yes,
I've
it was
been
very
waiting
good.
for this.
Very good news. Anything else?
No, that's
Okay,
it.
all set. Select board reports. You were gonna remind me of one, so don't forget.
Yes, I gotta find out where I wrote it. I found it.
Okay. John, you got any?
No, primarily stuff we've already covered, working out the details for a ballot question, so.
Okay, what was my thing?
Railing around North Common.
What is it? Okay, the railing around North Common. The railing around North Common is in horrible shape. A lot of water damage, obviously, and a lot of rot in all of those 6x6. We still have money left in the Common project.
Okay.
That Paul Cranston would have access to knowing the amount and so forth. I think there's probably sufficient amount there for us. Yeah, for us to take the opportunity to talk with Paul and to, utilize those funds to get a repair on that common, because,
Are these the gray ones that
Yeah,
are
they-
like 5 years old?
well, they seem, well, 5 years, not really, they're 10 years.
Okay, really?
And,
If
and
they
they're
do,
really, they're really rotted right from the
Yeah,
out.
no, I've seen it.
Yeah, they're.
If they do them out of white oak, they'll last forever.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, white oak it's got the same properties as cedar and a fraction of the cost.
No, they're 6x6, so they're not an odd thing. They're
Yeah.
odd lengths, that's for sure. One thing, I know that in previous times, there's been some local lumber people who have provided them, but I don't know if it's been in white oak or just maybe pine,
Yeah.
because they're pretty damaged.
Yeah, I think you guys know somebody with a sawmill. You might
Yes, we do.
have,
Yeah,
if they have availability of white oak,
okay,
it's just as good in outdoor as cedar would be.
okay. Because we really have had a lot
At
of
a
damage.
fraction of the cost.
And I agree with you, seems like it's just 5 years, but it's,
Yeah. I've
in,
seen them rotting, and I was shocked, because I remember painting them and
now
putting
now they're just
Yeah.
breaking,
Yeah.
so they look pretty rough.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So, we'll talk with Paul, get in, and I think, we can certainly reach out, get numbers from some, people and see what we can do to replace them. They have to be repainted and that kind of stuff, but, that can be a nice spring project for us and just to get that stuff done.
Sounds good.
Also, I just wanted to, ask Tammy if you would follow up, should have asked by the Historical Society people were here, that we have the banners that said celebrating our 250th anniversary that the Charitable Foundation supported. And we would like to offer those signs to the 250th.
Okay.
I feel that they may want to sign it, and
Nice.
then those can be, one of those could be held at the Historical Society,
Nice.
because those have been, they've lasted well, and we need to get them down. And so I just didn't want to take them down and destroy them when I think the Historical Society, especially if they're signed by the people who actually participated in the 250th.
Mm.
They've done a
Nice.
wonderful job,
They
and
have.
they deserve to be preserved in perpetuity, so
Great.
the plastic will last and their signatures are great.
Nice.
Also thanking the fire department and also the 250th anniversary group, because they're still working, they're the ones doing the skating rink. So
Yes.
that's good news for us too.
Yep.
We are working to sort of get the onboarding process with the new DPW person. Interesting, this morning I got a text message from the person to say that there's 4 people out with flu A. So I was running the department, no. No. So I was just very concerned today, but I think that they have just a very brief thing and that they'll be back in action probably tomorrow or the next day, so. But anyway, we're really have a lot of work ahead of us, and so lots to do. Correspondence and donations, so we do have before you, and for, to send a letter of appreciation, but also to accept $100, in lieu of taxes from the East Quabbin Land Trust, which is usually their annual gift, and an annual gift of, a very generous gift from the Insight Meditation Center for Buddhist Studies, for Buddhist Study, of $30,500 in lieu of taxes. So very, very appreciative of both of those donations, and especially this time of year. So thank you so much for that, and we'll make sure that they get appropriate notification of our thanks. Moving on, okay, for Chapter 90 Fair Share Program update. Is that Sean, or is that?
That was Mark.
That was Mark's not here? Okay, well, I know that we'll be meeting with, what's his name?
Chris Broussard.
Chris Broussard, what is it? It's January something.
I don't know the date.
He's coming at 9 o'clock or something in the morning, and,
Is it-
anyway, but we talk about.
Do we have a posted meeting for that?
Hmm?
Do we have a posted meeting for that already? Or we'll have to,
What was that, I'm sorry?
or I wasn't sure if we were planning on that being a full meeting of the board, or if,
I don't know, I
Or who's
just heard
representing?
that Chris Broussard was going to be in town.
okay.
That's all I know, and he was going to be here primarily to meet with the DPW superintendent.
Mhm.
So certainly, we can talk with him about, I think it was during the day.
Okay.
I think it's.
Yeah, I just
for
think we need
quickly.
to, have either one representative there, or if there's gonna be multiple representatives from the select board,
We
we
should
need to
post it, and
it.
just in case
but-
Mark and I can both
I
come
agree.
and whatever. And depending on the time of day, John might be able to drop in as well. Or maybe we can hook you in by phone
Yep,
for a half
well,
hour.
The water meeting?
No, this is for.
Chapter 90.
Chapter 90, and Fair Share Grant. which is, again, chapter 90 fair share, that's an amount of money as well that's added to the coffers.
Yes.
And to get some direction on how to use that. Okay, so, is there anything for chapter 90 fishing? Chris is gonna really walk us through all of that.
Supposed to walk us through all this, what I've heard.
Okay. So request to use town property, Quabbin Community Band, Town Hall, and Bandstand, that is their usual annual request. Are we waiving fees?
No,
No,
they do pay.
because they're a large group, okay. Okay, so we need to approve the use of the town hall for the Quabbin Community Band, and they are going to use for rehearsals on May 5th, August 4th, through August 4th, and that's 6:30 to 8:30. But they're certainly asking us well ahead.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve.
Yep, but there's also listed on here, Center Common Concerts and Southbury Common Concerts, so
On the
it's,
bandstand.
yep.
And
So we
then
have
if it's raining, they go into town hall.
So they're
Okay.
asking to use town property to entertain us. Okay,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
I move to approve the Quabbin Community Band request to use town property for concerts in the town center on 7/6, 7/13, 7/20, and 7/27. On the Southbury Common on 6/15, 6/22, and 6/29.
I would second that motion.
I'm not, oh, I got more.
Oh, that one?
Although I'm not entirely sure the location for 8/3 and 8/10. I think those might be center common as well. From 6 to 8 p.m. And then also for
8:3 and 8:10.
Oh, that would definitely be center common.
center common, okay. And then also for the town hall for rain dates, for those times, and rehearsals for May 5th through August 4th from 6:30 to 8:30 at the town hall.
Yeah.
That was a motion?
Yep.
Okay, that, motion made, I'll second that motion, and, further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, with our thanks,
Yes.
with our thanks. Oh, for sure. We have here in addition, okay, appointment application for Open Space Committee for a gentleman by the name of Gary Brigham. He has indicated an interest in participating in that Open Space Committee. We have need to make a recommendation to appoint.
I would move to appoint Gary Brigham to the Open Space Committee.
I would second that motion with our thanks to Gary S. Brigham for his participation or willingness to participate in our Open Space Committee. Seems he has an interesting background in trail building and maintenance and mid-state trail. Barry, sounds like he's got some good stuff going.
And
he's
was
an
on
iron
our-
worker and massage therapist in case things get bad. Okay.
And was on the Open Space Committee that put together the plan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that brings us to 2. So if anyone out there is interested, we're getting close to having enough people to have quorum and have the Open Space Committee start meeting. So that's, we're getting close.
Oh, we have 2 people. How is that close?
Okay, well, quorum, you don't,
For the meeting.
you need, out of 7, you need 4.
Oh, I thought it was 9.
Okay.
No, it used to be 9, now it's 7, yeah.
So
No, yeah, so we're halfway to having enough people
Do we approve?
for it to
Do we have a
meet.
motion? Seconded?
Approved.
Approved. Okay, so moving on to motor vehicle license renewals. We have a motor vehicle license renewal Class 2 for BC Auto and for Spring Hill Auto Salvage.
I move to approve the motor vehicle license renewal Class 2 for BC Auto and for Spring Hill Auto Salvage.
I would second that. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a common victualer's license for Dunkin' Donuts, Inc. and Mullins Herbal Tea House.
I move to approve the common victualer's license for Dunkin' Donuts Incorporated and Mullins Herbal Tea House.
I second that motion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have an entertainment, I swore we do this entertainment one before, but the entertainment for Dunkin' Donuts, Inc. TV.
I move to approve the entertainment license for Dunkin' Donuts Incorporated.
I second that. Those in favor?
Aye.
That concludes the business on our docket for the evening, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you for this, and
Thank you very much.